Alright, I thought in this video I would talk about slaving a guitar amplifier. This is something that I've done a lot over the years. My typical slave setup was a PV-XXX into a PV-5150 2 head and 412 cabinet. Slaving is simply the process of taking the preamp of one guitar amp and using that to drive the power amp of another guitar amp. There's some advantages to this. My PV-XXX doesn't get along with external cabinets very well. If I connect a speaker cabinet to the XXX, it completely changes the tone, the feel, the amount of gain I can have before feedback. All those characteristics of the amp completely change. And if I slave a second amp, I can keep everything in its current context and the current sound, but make it bigger. And by bigger, I mean fuller, so I can hear myself play on stage. Because you never know the setup, but it can be really beneficial to be able to have an amp near you and then maybe an amp across the other side of the stage from you. Side stage amps, maybe angled towards the crowd, maybe one toward the crowd, maybe one back, however you want to set it up. But you can have a bigger sound, you can feel you're playing better, and you can achieve that by slaving a second amp. The other thing, really big, that it allows for is having a backup amplifier when you go to a gig. It happens. You show up, you set up your equipment, something doesn't work. It's always a time crunch. You got to fix it right now. And sometimes if you just have a second amp and say, screw it, I'm only playing out of one amp tonight and it's the backup amp, but at least I have it, then there you go. So I'm going to talk about a couple different configurations here. Typically I would slave my 5150 off the XXX, but my 5150 is mic'd up for another project right now and I really don't want to move anything. And a friend just loaned me this really cool EVH 5150 Iconic, and I've been playing around with that. So while I had it here, I thought, hey, let's connect some cables and show some people how to do this. Alright, so the way this works is we're taking a signal from one amplifier and we're bringing it into another. So the into side of it is going to be in the effects return of the slave amp, because an effects return is basically a power amp input. So we're just driving the power of this one and skipping the preamp, and we're using the preamp from this side to do it. Now, two different ways I can do that off of this amp. I can use the effects send right here as an output, or I can use this line out right here as an output. Now, one thing that this amp has that I really like is that it has separate controls for the output level on these sends. And a lot of amps don't have that, such as this EVH 5150 does not have controls for the send and return like this XXX does. So we're going to make a connection here and we're going to dial this control up while I play so you can hear the other amp fill in. Same with the line out send over here once we get to that portion. Alright, so let's check out what this effects send into effects return slave setup sounds like. I'll start with just the XXX here. Dial in Okay, so that sounds like both amps are about equal to me being in front of them. And it's a big fat sound, which I really like. So now we'll try the other method, and we will slave from the line out into effects return. Just the triple X. Dial up. So, I like the line out better in this particular case. I feel like it gives me more, a more clear, defined sound coming into the slave amplifier, as opposed to it sounding darker through the effects send. And that is, of course, just my equipment. Your amps may sound completely different than mine because they're all built differently. So I think that's a pretty good test. Hopefully this mic picked it up, and that's it. So one thing I just noticed on this particular rig is that the 5150 reverb, resonance, and presence controls are all active right now because they're all power amp based. So we can do a lot of changes to the sound here between the two amplifiers, even though the one is slaved. I could do EQ adjustments just on the Triple X, and that would carry through to the 5150. But the 5150 speaker sounds a lot different than the Triple X speaker. The 5150 is a very bright sound. It has a very articulate, clear pick attack, playing on the dirty channels, and I hear that coming through. So there may be times when I would want to do some fiddling, but for right now, let's just take a look at what the presence and resonance sound like here, dialing them up and down. They're both set on 5 right now, and I'm going to dial the resonance back here to 0. So there's a lot of tonal capabilities there that are above and beyond the normal EQ setting of the master amp. So your equipment's going to vary differently from these, but just wanted to point that out since I just discovered that myself. I wasn't going to buy this amp from my friend. In fact, I just sent him a message last night and told him I didn't want to buy it. But after setting up this slave system, I'm really reconsidering that because I wanted a second single 12 cab or amp to slave, and man, it sounds really good with both of these running together. I get the dirt of the Triple X, I get the attack of the EVH 5150. It's just a really cool sound. Got a lot of power, and I'm not even at that high of a volume level. definitely below a drummer at this point, but it's just this big, huge sound, so I'm really digging it. All right, so that's a process that I use to slave an amp. You can figure out other ways to do it too, depending on what inputs and outputs you have available on your equipment. Hopefully you found that helpful, and good luck with your playing. We'll see you next time.